4 protective meditations. This is a set of 4 meditation topics that have been grouped together within the Theravada tradition. With the idea that these 4 meditations each serve a particular protective function for the mind, and also in a certain way serve as a basis for a particular type of spiritual development. And so the 4 protective meditations are recollection of the Buddha, or mindfulness of the qualities of the Buddha, which we did last week. Then the meditation on loving kindness, which we'll do this week. Then the meditation on the parts of the body. And then lastly, the meditation on death. And so the recollection of the Buddha has the protective function in that it serves as the basis for generating faith or trust in the Buddha as the fully enlightened teacher. And this quality of faith is like the rain, or actually the quality of faith is like the seed from which all of the virtues of the spiritual life develop and unfold. And recollection of the Buddha is like the rain which nurtures the development of that seed. The loving kindness meditation has the special function of protecting the mind from anger and ill will, which I'll elaborate more as we go along. The meditation on the parts of the body has the function of sort of engendering a very close inspection, examination of the constituents of the body in order to eliminate sensual lust, infatuation, and attachment to the body. And then the meditation on death serves a protective function in that it counters heedlessness or negligence and inspires a sense of urgency, a sense that since one has to die, that one has to undertake the full commitment to the practice in this very life itself. Okay, so today we are taking the second protective meditation, which is the meditation on loving kindness. The word that's translated loving kindness in Pali, it's metta. And the word metta, it's derived from another word, mita. Mita means friend. And so metta might be translated very literally as friendliness, but I don't like it as a translation because friendliness suggests just, chumminess. You have a very, cheerful, friendly personality. And yet people with friendly personalities can often nurture a lot of ill will and vindictiveness within themselves. So I'd prefer to translate metta by these compound word, loving kindness, which I think captures the quality. First, loving conveys the inward quality of metta, that it's a deep, heartfelt concern for the well-being and happiness of all beings, oneself and others. And then it's kindness in that this inner feeling of love expresses itself, manifests itself in kindness towards others, in thought, word, and action. And so I say that loving kindness involves a heartfelt concern for the well-being and happiness of all beings. And when I say well-being and happiness, these 2 words also have to be taken in conjunction. So if we think that maybe love should generate the wish for the happiness of others, but happiness in itself is insufficient, because I can wish for well-being, for beings to be happy, to go to parties together, to go out on drinking bouts together, to join, if you see a crowd at a rock concert or at a football game, when their team wins, then they're ecstatic, happy, full of happiness. But the happiness has to be balanced by and complemented by well-being, by true well-being. And well-being implies, I would say, the wholesome development of the mind, the development of wholesome qualities in the mind, particularly those qualities which eliminate or at least counter the causes of suffering and which promote the achievement of the ultimate good, which for Buddhism is the attainment of enlightenment and nibbana. Okay, so metta, loving kindness, is the heartfelt concern for the well-being and happiness of others. And this is a quality which is not confined to meditation. In fact, there are some suttas where the Buddha speaks about how one expresses loving kindness through bodily action, through speech, and through thoughts. But the way we intensify the development of loving kindness and establish it as a strong disposition of the mind is through the practice of loving kindness as a method of meditation. It's a method of meditation that uses various functions of the mind, that uses the power of thought, the power of imagination, the capacity even for visualization, in order to awaken this heartfelt concern for the well-being and happiness of others, to awaken it, to strengthen it, to fortify it, and to enable it to flourish, to flower, to become a powerful force within the mind. And so in the case of the Buddha, his capacity of loving kindness was so strong that sometimes when enemies would come to refute him in arguments, or even some assassins were sent to assassinate him, just by generating loving kindness, he was able to win over his adversaries and turn them into devoted disciples. And even one time his arch enemy, Devadatta, released an elephant, a wild elephant, at the Buddha. And the elephant came running straight towards the Buddha. And all of the other monks fled and deserted the Buddha. And the Buddha was alone on the road with the elephant coming running, dashing towards him. Then the Buddha generated that loving kindness towards the elephant and sent the beams or radiance of his loving kindness towards the elephant. And then as the elephant came within the orb of his loving kindness, the elephant bowed down and venerated the Buddha. And so this might seem fantastic, but I think this is true, that when one develops very strong power of loving kindness, it has a kind of magnetic effect which will transform people. Even when you come into a room, if you have strongly developed loving kindness, people even unconsciously will pick up on your vibrations and will feel, that this is a nice person, a good person. Okay, but we have to begin by developing loving kindness methodically, systematically, gradually. It's great to think about the powers and the functions of loving kindness when it's fully developed, but we have to start ourselves a little bit like starting a fire in a fireplace, with just a flame, lighting some pieces of paper and fanning it until that flame of loving kindness spreads to the twigs and then to the logs, until one has a strong fire of loving kindness burning in the heart. And so it's a matter, at the beginning, it's somewhat difficult. It requires effort, attention, mindfulness. But through repeated cultivation, it becomes a more natural disposition of the mind until it becomes gradually easier to cultivate. Okay, now the question is, how does one cultivate loving kindness methodically? And the teachers within the Theravada tradition have developed, actually this method is shared, it's not only unique to the Theravada tradition, but it seems to have developed even before the division of Buddhism into schools, because one finds variation of the same method in the other schools of Buddhism. But there's a systematic method which has been developed by the early Buddhist teachers, by which we can train the mind to give rise to this quality of loving kindness, and then to successively strengthen it and to be able to spread it to wider and wider circles. And in a course, like an extended retreat on the meditation on loving kindness, the teacher will introduce the stages of this method. He'll introduce this method in stages over several days. Say if it's a week-long retreat, he'll introduce each stage, after one works with the earliest stages for a few days. But in this one-day program, I'm going to try to compress the broad outline of the whole method into one day. Okay, the basic method uses two components, what I call the formula and the recipients. And so the method succeeds or operates through the intersection of these two facets, these two aspects of the practice. The formula is a simple verbal formula that one generates or applies in the mind in order to arouse this concern for the well-being and happiness of others. There are numerous variations on the formula, but I'm going to teach the particular phrases that I found most congenial to myself. Okay, so I use a 4-phrase formula. And I'll use the symbol X to represent the person that one is generating loving kindness towards. So we have, may X be well. So the first aspect is being well, by which I would understand being healthy, because being healthy is a prerequisite for any kind of happiness. So if one is ill and sick and afflicted, then it's very difficult to really be vibrant, dynamic, and happy. Okay, so may X be well in the sense of be healthy. The second, may X be happy. So happy is the mental state, the state, maybe it doesn't need explanation, but a state of being joyous, buoyant, inwardly peaceful and happy. Okay, the third I find very particularly poignant in these times. May X be safe. Because now there are so many dangers out in the world, especially when one reads so often about like suicide bombers setting off their bombs at airports, or gunmen coming into a bar, shooting down people. And so I always think that those people who are killed in these terrible incidents, these tragedies, they could have just with a flip of the coin, the flip of the switch, they could have been my own relatives and friends. And so I always want everybody to be safe, to be free from all danger and adversity. So that is the third aspect. And the fourth aspect, may all of X's good purposes be fulfilled. So when people engage in various wholesome activities, one wants them to achieve success and fulfillment through those activities. Okay, so this is the formula. To repeat it, may X be well, in other words, healthy. May X be happy, joyful, buoyant, uplifted, elated in mind. May X be safe, free from all danger. May all of X's good purposes be fulfilled. So this is the formula, and I said that there are two aspects to the practice. So there's the formula and the recipients. The recipients are the people to whom one directs loving kindness. The ideal, sort of at the consummation of the practice, is to be able to generate and to radiate loving kindness to all sentient beings, to all living beings. And when I first, many years ago, started to practice loving kindness, I thought, I looked at the systematic way it was explained in the meditation manuals, and I thought, I'm a person of high spiritual development. I don't need that step-by-step method. I can begin at once by generating loving kindness towards all beings. And so I would sit and think, oh, may all beings be well, may all beings be happy, may all beings be well, may all beings be happy. And for a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes, I felt really uplifted. But then it got, who are these beings? And why should I be wishing them to be happy? And then I realized that the teachers of the meditation manuals had the strategy in mind for a purpose, that they understood human psychology very, very well. And they knew how we have to proceed step by step before we can reach that point of extending boundless loving kindness. Okay, so we choose certain or select certain persons, and these persons come into categories. Okay, so the first is oneself, that one has to develop loving kindness towards oneself. And this is not developing what I would call egotistic loving kindness. It's not the wish May I be number one. May I be the one who wins all the praise from others. May I be the most successful in my work. But the objective is, the way I understand it, is to see that at the base of one's own being, sort of underlying all of our activities, is a deep wish for one's own well-being and happiness. And this enables oneself to use oneself as the criterion for generating loving kindness to others. Because when we generate loving kindness to others, it's based on an implicit understanding that for each and every human being, and even each and every living being, the fundamental drive at the base of their own being is the wish to be well and happy. And so if I can see that I want to be well and happy, then all I have to do is to undertake what I would call a subjective exchange of myself for the other, putting myself in the position of the other, and immediately I could understand that each and every other being wants to be well and happy. Okay, so one starts with oneself, generating the wish, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be safe, may all of my good purposes be fulfilled. And by strengthening that wish for one's own well-being and happiness, one then has a basis for knowing how to develop loving kindness towards others. Okay, so the first person, oneself, then the second person that one brings in is what I would call a dear and respected person. This can be a teacher, it can be an elder in the family, somebody who has been a benefactor to oneself, not somebody that one has too close a relationship with, somebody towards whom there's a little distance, but one has a feeling of affection for that person, affection coupled with respect and maybe gratitude towards that person. And so towards that dear and respected person, one generates that feeling of loving kindness using the formula. Okay, the third person is a very close person, a very close friend. But I suggest that romantic partners, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, do not, let's say a husband doesn't use the wife doesn't use the husband, boyfriend doesn't use girlfriend doesn't use boyfriend, because then like certain strong feelings of attachment gets mixed in with the concern for the well-being and happiness of the other. So choose like a very good friend, a very close person, but not one's romantic partner. Okay, and then one generates the loving kindness towards that person. So that's 3. The fourth person is what we call the neutral person or the indifferent person. This should be a person that one sees regularly, but one has no particular personal relationship with that person. It could be a colleague at work, somebody who is a few, maybe in another room at the office that you see maybe in the hallway. Or it could be if you go to a regular gas station, the attendant at that gas station who looks after your car. Or you go regularly to the supermarket, the clerk at the checkout counter. You just might say, how are you? They say, how are you today? You say, fine. How are you today? Fine. But there's no feeling of mutual concern. Okay, so we call this the neutral person. Okay, then the fifth person is, we can call this the troublemaker. Usually they call this the hostile person, the person that creates difficulties for you, the one that might be a bit aggressive, spiteful, greedy, competitive, or somebody that you have just a natural and instinctive dislike for. And I want to say, if there's nobody that fits into that category, and I have to say, I find myself in that position. I have a hard time thinking of an individual person in my day-to-day life that I have a hostile feeling towards. Maybe because I don't get out that much and interact with people so much. So I could tell you a field where there's a almost countless number of people to choose from. The United States Congress. I don't want to tell you who I choose. But if you observe things going on, if you ever look in or read the news or look in C-SPAN and see the the sessions of Congress, you'll see those people who are always blocking legislation which is intended to benefit people. Those people who from their nasty political agenda obstruct, bills that would promote the well-being of poor people, hungry people, people that would prevent, runaway climate change and so on. So, but you have to know that person's face, not just the name, but be able to see that person in your mind's eye. Okay, so these are the people that we have that form the subjects of loving kindness. Oneself, the dear and respected person, the very close person, the neutral person, and the hostile person. And from each of these categories, now you should choose one person. And you don't have to deliberate, you might see two dear and respected people. Don't waste time vacillating back and forth. Should I choose this one or that one? Just take the first one that your mind focuses on. Okay, so each of you choose right now one person for each of these categories. Of course, for yourself, you don't have any choice. Unless you have multiple personalities, multiple personality disorder, then you have to choose which one. Okay, self. Okay, dear and respected person. choose one. I'll count 10 for each one. Very close person. Neutral person. Hostile person. Okay, so by now you should have each chosen the persons that fit into these categories. Okay, and now the way the method of meditation works, and I'm going to guide the first session, is that one goes through the formula with respect to each of these persons. One brings each person to mind and dwells on that person. It could be, I would say 20 seconds, 30 seconds, half a minute. And the objective is to generate a warm, what I call a warm, glowing feeling in the heart towards that person. That is sort of the mark that the metta, the loving kindness, is starting to succeed. If one doesn't generate that feeling, don't worry. Because what we are doing with the method is creating what I would call dispositions through the use of the formula. And it's through the repeated practice of the method that one starts making the heart softer and softer, warmer and warmer. And so that feeling of softness, of warmth, might not appear immediately. It might take time to work on it, repeated practice. But what we are doing through the method is creating that disposition, or building up that gradual heat, that gradual softness. Maybe here the appropriate simile, it's not like lighting a fire where you put the flame to the paper and it immediately catches. But maybe it's like boiling an egg where the egg doesn't immediately become a hard-boiled egg, but while it's in the pot with the water, and then the water gradually starts to bubble, and then it starts to bubble more and more fiercely, more and more ever more effervescence, until in time the egg starts to harden, and then after a few minutes you get the hard-boiled egg. Okay, so this is the basic methodology. Maybe I should ask now whether anybody has any questions before we start. Yes? I think maybe if you stand up. Do we have that mobile microphone?
Yes, Bhante, I remember when I studied this originally, the persons to be chosen should, the direction was that they not be of the opposite sex.
Yeah, that is the instruction that comes down in, the classical meditation manuals. Okay. Let me handle this from two angles. Okay, that comes within the classical meditation manuals, which are thinking of young monks who will naturally choose as if they're not instructed otherwise, as the subject for the loving kindness meditation, the sweet young girl in the house down the road who regularly offers alms when they go on their alms round.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
So I think, we're presumably older, mature people, so I think, for the dear respected person, even the close person, the close friend, and so on, I would say it doesn't matter, but don't choose the romantic person or somebody. If you should have a romantic crush on somebody, don't choose that person.
Yes. Thank you. I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a technical question.
Yeah.
So first you bring to mind the person and then you say the formula?
Yeah, I'm going to guide one through those stages,
Yeah.
but just to anticipate, what one does is first conjure up or bring to mind an image of that person, as though when we're seeing that person, roughly the distance from where I am to where Ravi is in the first seat here. What is this, about 10 yards away?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, before we start, maybe since we've been sitting here since 9 o'clock, let us do a 5-minute stretch so you can stand up, walk around a bit. Don't go too far away. If you want, you could just do a quick walk around the building. Let's see, it's 10:13, so 10:20 we'll start.